Media fact-checker. Former BP executive and Thatcher advisor urges Australia to phase out petrol reliance amid Iran conflict risks. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Greg Bourne, former BP Australasia regional president and Thatcher's energy advisor, authored the op-ed in both the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. The Strait of Hormuz is a 50-kilometre maritime choke point serving as the world's busiest oil shipping channel, currently closed to most ships due to military threats, drones. Australia imports over 90% of its refined oil products, with national fuel reserves at just 36 days, well below the 90-day international benchmark. Australia's main electricity grid is using record-high amounts of solar and wind, alongside record-low gas usage as of February 2024. Australia has over 450,000 electric vehicles registered, reducing petrol-diesel demand by the equivalent of 1.2 days of petrol use according to Mandela Partners. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. ABC staff strike over pay and conditions disrupts programming with BBC content replacement. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Over 2,000 ABC staff walked off the job for a 24-hour strike on Wednesday, the first in 20 years. ABC services including TV, News Breakfast, 7 p.m. News, 7.30, Radio, AM, PM, Radio National Breakfast, and Digital were replaced by BBC World Service and repeats during the strike. ABC Managing Director Hugh Marks offered a 10% total pay rise over 3 years, 3.5% in year 1, 3.25% in years 2 and 3. Staff unions, MEAA and CPSU, rejected the offer, citing it was below inflation. January 2024 inflation rate was 3.8% and failed to address appraisal processes, career progression, night shift penalties, and reproductive health leave. ABC Radio Melbourne Mornings host RAF Epstein announced staff were striking over sustainable, secure work and not job security, with automated messaging and pre-programmed music replacing presenters. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states over 2,000 staff walked off the job, while Article 2 reports approximately 1,200 MEAA members, out of 4,500 total staff, participated in the strike. Article 1 claims Marks changed emergency broadcasting definitions to include national international importance events, while Article 2 does not mention this specific change. Article 1 states Marks denied unions had stonewalled for 9 months, but Article 2 does not include this direct quote or allegation. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia approves massive coal seam gas expansion in Queensland until 2081. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The federal government approved a coal seam gas expansion project, Australia Pacific LNG, in Queensland's Sorot and Bowen basins until 2081. The project includes up to 1,695 new gas wells, 1,545 kilometers of gas and water pipelines, and 3 processing facilities. The project is expected to produce about 2,033 petajoules of gas and operate until 2061, with an extension to 2081 for environmental compliance. The project's public environment report estimated 9 million tons of CO2 emissions during construction and operation, plus 111 million tons from burning the gas. Australia Pacific LNG is a joint venture of ConocoPhillips, Origin Energy, and Sinopec. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports the project's lifetime emissions as 120 million tons, while ABC does not specify a total but cites 9 m tons during construction operation and 111 m tons from burning gas, implying a higher total. The Guardian highlights the project as the 36th fossil fuel approval under Albanese, while ABC does not mention this specific count. The Guardian emphasises the project's emissions exceed Australia's annual transport emissions, but ABC does not explicitly compare it to other sectors. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Olympian Rohan Dennis controversial Instagram post about a Porsche after his wife's fatal car incident. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Rohan Dennis, a former world champion cyclist and Australian Olympian, London 2012, was convicted in May 2024 of an aggravated charge of creating likelihood of harm after his wife Melissa Hoskins died in December 2023 when she was struck by his car during an argument outside their Adelaide home. Dennis pleaded guilty to the charge and received a 17-month suspended jail sentence, 1 year and 4 months, and a 2-year good behaviour bond, along with a 5-year driving ban. Melissa Hoskins, an Olympian and world champion cyclist, died on December 30, 2023, after jumping onto the bonnet of Dennis's Volkswagen Amarok while he drove at tilde 20 km/h in Medindy Lane, Adelaide, and was dragged under the car. Dennis posted a photo of a Porsche on Instagram on June 2024 with the caption "What an absolute weapon," sparking outrage and criticism from South Australia's Victims' Rights Commissioner Sarah Quick. Dennis's Instagram account was inactive since his conviction but reactivated in June 2024 with the Porsche post, followed by posts of his children riding bikes captioned "Two absolute weapons." But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian states Dennis posted a bike frame photo on June 19, 2024, before the Porsche post, but this detail is not mentioned in ABC or Newscomer. Newscomer reports Dennis was given a suspended jail sentence of 1 year and 4 months, while ABC and The Guardian specify 17 months, likely a combined total of 1 year 4 months suspended plus 3 months unserved. The Guardian notes Dennis deleted his entire Instagram account after the Porsche post, but ABC and Newscomer do not confirm this deletion. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Research reveals how proximity to trees affects property values and public attitudes toward urban trees. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Associate Professor Song Shi led a study, 2021 to 2025, at the University of Technology Sydney showing trees 10 to 20 metres from a house increase property value by $30,000, while trees within 10 metres reduce value by up to $70,000, accounting for bedrooms, land size, parking, and CBD proximity. Landscape architect Matt Cantwell, Secret Gardens, notes homeowners often oppose trees on private property despite valuing street trees for aesthetic appeal, e.g., Ocean Street, Woollahra, Paddington Street, Paddington. Danielle Hughes, Greater Sydney Landcare, reports residents frequently cite gum trees dropping branches as a primary concern, despite mature trees cooling areas by nearly 10 degrees and reducing cooling costs by 20 to 30%. Dr. Nada Nadapaju, University of Sydney, and PhD candidate Amir Pakiz found Western Sydney suburbs like St Mary's and Blacktown increased tree coverage, while Liverpool saw a decrease, possibly linked to construction, e.g., new airport expansion. National President of the Australian Institute of Architects Adam Haddow attributes reluctance to private trees to maintenance perceptions, including dropped leaves flowers and pool lawn obstruction. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Arrests and investigation into mistaken identity kidnapping and murder of 85-year-old Chris Baghsarian in Sydney. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 2 additional people, a 23-year-old man and a 23-year-old woman, were arrested on the 20th of March, 2024 in Seven Hills during a search warrant execution. Gerard Andrews, 29, and Daniel Stevens, 24, were charged on the 24th of February, 2024 with murder and kidnapping with intent to ransom in relation to Chris Baghsarian's death. Chris Baghsarian, 85, was allegedly kidnapped from his North Ryde home on the 13th of February, 2024 in a case of mistaken identity. Baghsarian's body was found near a golf club in Pitt Town on the 24th of February, 2024, over 10 days after his abduction. Police released CCTV footage showing 3 men near a Dural property, alleged stronghold, on the night of the kidnapping. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states the intended target was a relative of Dimitri Stepanyan, but The Guardian does not mention this detail. ABC describes the blue car as unspecified make, while The Guardian specifies a blue Hyundai sedan with a missing hubcap. ABC emphasizes Baghsarian was allegedly tortured in a Dural safe house via videos and images, but The Guardian only references CCTV footage of 3 men near the site. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Coroner's inquest into wellness influencers' freebirth death and doula's refusal to testify. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Stacey Warner-Key, 30, died after complications from a free birth at her Seaford home on September 29, 2024. She suffered a postpartum hemorrhage and multiple cardiac arrests before dying at Frankston Hospital. Emily Lowell, known as the authentic birthkeeper, was present during the birth and when 000 was called. Lowell has refused to provide a statement citing privilege against self-incrimination. Coroner Therese McCarthy will examine whether earlier medical intervention could have saved Warner-Key's life. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau says Lowell was present during the birth and when the ambulance was called at 4:13 a.m., but ABC does not specify the exact time of Lowell's presence. News Kamau states the court was told Lowell could be given a certificate protecting her evidence, while ABC does not mention this detail. News Kamau refers to the directions hearing as held on Tuesday morning without specifying the date, while ABC does not confirm this timing. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Teenager on bail allegedly stabs woman in Melbourne shopping centre. 2 shootings reported in Victoria this week. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A 25-year-old woman was stabbed while walking through M-City Shopping Centre on Blackburn Road, Clayton, around 7:30 to 7:50 a.m. on Thursday, 7:30 a.m. per ABC, 7:50 a.m. per Thij. The victim was a stranger to the 16-year-old male offender who allegedly committed the attack. The woman was taken to the Alfred Hospital with upper body injuries and remained in a serious but stable condition on Thursday night. A passerby helped the victim and called 000 after the stabbing. Police arrested the 16-year-old boy at a local medical centre in Clayton soon after the incident. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reported the stabbing occurred at 7:30 a.m., while Thij reported 7:50 a.m. Thij mentioned the victim was stabbed on her way to work while walking through the shopping centre, but ABC did not specify whether she was inside or outside the centre at the time. Thij stated the boy was on bail before he attacked the stranger, but ABC did not explicitly mention the bail status in its headline or body text. This story was covered by ABC News and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's medal haul at the 2024 World Athletics Indoor Championships in Poland. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Jessica Hull won silver in the women's 1,500 metre at the World Athletics Indoor Championships in Torun, Poland, on Sunday, March 2024, with a time of 3 minutes and 59.45 seconds, breaking the Australian and Oceanian indoor record, previously 4 minutes and 1.19 seconds. Georgia Hunter-Bell of Great Britain won gold in the women's 1,500 metre with a world best time of 3 minutes and 58.53 seconds, 2026 standard, finishing 0.92 seconds ahead of Hull. Adam Spencer won bronze in the men's 1,500 metre with a time of 3 minutes and 40.26 seconds, finishing stronger after initially lying in 5th place. Australia won a total of 5 medals, 2 silver, 3 bronze, across 3 days at the championships in Torun, Poland. Peter Boll set a new Oceanian record in the men's 800 meter with a time of 1 minute and 45.14 seconds but did not win a medal, finishing behind US's Cooper Lutkenhouse. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Women's Asian Cup final between Australia's Matildas and Japan in Sydney, 2026 edition. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Women's Asian Cup final was played on March 21, 2026, at Stadium Australia in Sydney, starting at 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time. Japan won the final 1-0 against Australia, with Mika Hameno scoring the only goal in the 15th minute. The match drew a record crowd of approximately 74,397 fans to Stadium Australia. Japan's starting lineup included Ayaka Yamashita, GK, Riko Uki, Mika Hameno, and Aroba Fujino among others. Australia's starting lineup featured Mackenzie Arnold, GK, Ellie Carpenter, Caitlin Ford, and Sam Kerr. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC mentioned the Matildas semi-final against China drew 35,170 fans, while The Guardian did not provide this specific number and focused on the final crowd. ABC reported that the Matildas semi-final against China was in Perth, while The Guardian did not specify the location of the semi-final but focused on the final. ABC mentioned that the Matildas' front three was set as Kerr, Fowler, and Ford, but The Guardian did not specify the exact front three lineup in the final. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's fuel supply risks amid Middle East conflict and regional export restrictions. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Australia imports around 90% of its fuel, making it highly dependent on foreign refineries during the global oil crisis. Malaysia is Australia's third largest supplier of refined fuels, Newskamau, and a top source of crude oil, Guardian. Malaysia's embassy warned Australia that the country would prioritise our own needs before considering overseas demand, both sources. South Korea has capped petrol and diesel exports to safeguard its own supply, reducing Australia's jet fuel supply by 32%, Newskamau. Chris Bowen, Energy Minister, stated Malaysia has taken no action to threaten fuel supply to Australia and all expected ships have arrived, both sources. But not all outlets told the same story. Newskamau states Malaysia is Australia's third largest supplier of refined fuels, while The Guardian claims Malaysia is Australia's top source of crude oil. Newskamau reports Malaysia produces and refines a lot more fuel than Malaysia or Malaysians would need, but The Guardian highlights Morrison's warning that Australia's heavy dependence on Malaysia for petroleum products is a significant risk. The Guardian reports Bowen conceded some petrol stations are running low on stock, while Newskamau only states Bowen dismissed the Malaysian warning as very broad and did not mention shortages. This story was covered by The Guardian and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Nicola Olyslagers finishes as silver medalist in women's high jump at World Indoor Championships in Poland. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Nicola Olyslagers won silver in the women's high jump at the World Athletics Indoor Championships in Torun, Poland. Yaroslava Mahuchik won gold in the women's high jump with a clearance of 2.01 meters. Olyslagers, Yulia Levchenko, Ukraine, and Angelina Topic, Serbia, shared silver after all clearing 1.99 meters on their first attempt. Olyslagers cleared 1.99 meters, equaling her indoor personal best. Eleanor Patterson, Australia, finished 7th with a clearance of 1.93 meters. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports Olyslagers quote, "As I just prayed and was able to make myself feel the right way," while ABC reports I wasn't feeling in my absolute championship best shape. The Guardian reports Hayley Kitching's time as 2 minutes and 0.99 seconds, while ABC reports it as 2 minutes and 0.09 seconds. The Guardian does not mention Jess Hull or Adam Spencer's performances, while ABC includes their 1500m heat times. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. 2 people arrested for attempting to enter UK nuclear submarine base in Scotland. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 2 people, a 34-year-old man and a 31-year-old woman, were arrested after attempting to enter HM Naval Base Clyde, Fars Lane, in Scotland on the 19th of March, 2026 around 5 p.m. local time. The man arrested was identified as an Iranian national. The woman's nationality was initially reported as unknown but later specified as Romanian in one source. The base houses the UK's nuclear-armed Trident submarines and is not open to the public. Police Scotland confirmed the arrests and stated inquiries were ongoing, with no further comment from the Royal Navy beyond acknowledging the incident. Separately, 2 Iranian nationals, Nematollah Shahsavani, 40, and Olireza Farasati, 22, appeared in London court on the 19th of March accused of hostile surveillance of Jewish sites. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports The Guardian's first article states the MOD considers the incident not particularly serious, but ABC does not mention this assessment. ABC highlights ongoing MI5 warnings about Iranian plots, while The Guardian's first article downplays the seriousness of the current incident. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US-Iran conflict escalation and its economic political fallout on Trump's administration. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Petrol prices in the US have risen by over 80 cents per gallon since the start of the Iran conflict. The Trump administration coordinated the release of 400 million barrels of emergency oil stocks from the IEA's 32 member countries, the largest single release in IEA history. Over a quarter of the emergency oil release came from the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which holds federally owned crude oil in over 60 underground salt caverns along the U.S. Gulf Coast. The U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve's capacity is 700 million barrels, and it was reduced from 60% full to 45% full after the release. Brent crude oil price exceeded $104 per barrel as the Strait of Hormuz remained closed for the first time in modern history. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the 2 sources as they are nearly identical in content. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. NSW introduces laws to crush illegal high-speed e-bikes amid safety concerns and gambling reform delays. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. NSW government will introduce legislation to seize and crush e-bikes operating over 25 km per hour, with roadside dyno units for speed testing. Transport Minister John Graham stated if it behaves like a motorbike, it's probably illegal and could end up in the crusher. A 2-day safety blitz in NSW last week issued 170 fines for illegal e-bikes. Independent MP Kate Cheney plans to introduce a private member's bill for a gambling ad ban, marking 1,000 days since Peter Murphy's report. The e-Safety Commissioner warned AI companion chatbots lack safeguards for children, including age verification and self-harm support. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports NSW's minimum e-bike age is undecided between 12 and 16, while Newscom Australia does not mention an age restriction for e-bikes. The Guardian states Victorian schools will remain open but with limited supervision, while Newscom Australia does not cover the Victorian teacher strike. The Guardian mentions fuel price support measures for truck drivers, but Newscom Australia does not reference this policy. This story was covered by The Guardian and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Qantas Jetstar cuts NZ flights due to fuel crisis amid global volatility. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Jetstar NZ has reduced 12% of flights between Auckland, Sydney and Auckland Brisbane routes from May due to soaring jet fuel costs linked to the Middle East conflict. All impacted passengers on Jetstar NZ's reduced flights have been contacted directly, with most offered same-day travel alternatives. Qantas-owned Jetstar cited soaring jet fuel prices as a result of the conflict in the Middle East and other rising costs for the schedule changes. Air New Zealand also reduced 5% of its domestic international flights, March 16 to May 3, due to unprecedented volatility in jet fuel prices from the Middle East conflict. Energy Minister Chris Baghsarian reported 8% of Australian service stations, 560+ stations, were without diesel, petrol, or both as of the reporting period. But not all outlets told the same story. Newscomer reports 55 flights cut from Jetstar NZ's Trans-Tasman route, while ABC states only 12% of services, unspecified number, are impacted. Newscomer lists Sydney Queenstown via Melbourne and Auckland Christchurch routes as affected, but ABC does not mention these specific routes. Newscomer attributes 560+ Australian service stations without fuel, 8% nationwide, while ABC does not provide this specific statistic. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Democrats impeach Florida AG Pam Bondi over Epstein files briefing refusal. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche attended a closed-door briefing on Jeffrey Epstein files at Capitol Hill on Wednesday. Democrats walked out of the briefing after less than an hour due to Bondi's refusal to testify under oath. The House Oversight Committee voted to subpoena Bondi earlier this month, with 5 Republicans joining Democrats. California Congressman Robert Garcia called the briefing an outrageous fake hearing. Florida Congressman Maxwell Alejandro Frost repeatedly asked Bondi if she would testify under oath, to which she refused. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Bondi accused Democrats of using Epstein documents to distract from Trump's political successes, but Article 2 does not mention this specific accusation. Article 1 includes a quote from Frost calling Bondi a liar and referencing her alleged spying, while Article 2 does not repeat this specific accusation. Article 2 includes unrelated details about Joe Kent's resignation and FBI location data purchases, which are not present in Article 1. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. ABC staff strike over rejected pay offer and conditions dispute. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. ABC staff voted 60% no to the latest Enterprise Agreement, EA, offer, with 75.6% of the workforce participating, Newscomer, ABC, Guardian. The rejected pay offer included a 3.5% pay rise in the first year and 3.25% in the next 2 years, totaling 10% over 3 years, ABC, Guardian. A 24-hour strike began at 11 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time on Wednesday, 2024, affecting live broadcasts and recorded media, Newscomer, ABC, Guardian. The ABC has approximately 4,500 staff, ABC, Guardian. The vote was 395 votes short of the majority required to accept the offer, Newscomer, ABC. But not all outlets told the same story. Newscomer states only 40% of voting staff approved the pay agreement, while ABC and Guardian report 60% voted no, majority against. ABC claims the offer was sustainable and financially responsible, but Guardian and MEAA argue it was below inflation, 3.8% versus 3.5% per 3.25%. Guardian reports the strike is the first in 20 years, but Newscomer and ABC state the last major strike was in 2006. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Homicide investigation and manslaughter charge in Perth's Banksia Grove over a woman's death. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A 42-year-old woman was found unresponsive at a home in Banksia Grove, Perth's northern suburbs, on Thursday morning around 9 a.m. The woman was declared dead at the scene by paramedics after attempts to revive her. The incident occurred on Mayerley Bend, Banksia Grove. A man in his 40s was assisting police with inquiries, Article 1, and later charged, Article 2. Police received the initial report at approximately 9 a.m. on Thursday. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states a man in his 40s is assisting police, while Article 2 specifies a 47-year-old man was arrested and charged. Article 1 does not mention charges or an arrest, while Article 2 reports a man was charged with manslaughter. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Kangaroo Island Council's proposed feral cat eradication policy and progress. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Kangaroo Island Council is considering a last cat policy to ban new pet cats from the island as part of a feral cat eradication effort. Mayor Michael Pengelly stated the goal is to rid Kangaroo Island of feral cats and not allow any more cats in by 2030. The Dudley Peninsula project has removed 2,800 feral cats, leaving around 150 remaining, with a 95% reduction expected this winter. Feral cats contribute to a $12 million annual decline in sheep production due to toxoplasmosis, according to Mayor Pengelly and Jack Goff. The federal government provided $1.61 million in December 2023, with an additional $800,000 from the state government in March 2024 for the project. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources on core factual claims. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. A real possum was found in Hobart Airport gift shop among plush toys. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A real possum was found nestled among plush toys in the gift shop at Hobart Airport on Wednesday morning. The possum appeared calm when discovered and was safely escorted out of the terminal by airport management. Liam Bloomfield, multi-site manager with Lagardère AWPL at Hobart Airport, confirmed the incident and stated the possum was not stressed initially. The possum wandered into the departures gift shop at approximately 11:45 a.m. The possum was described as a brushtail possum, one of 5 species found in Tasmania. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC mentions the possum caused pandemonium when it left the shop, while The Guardian does not mention any disruption beyond the initial discovery. ABC describes the possum's exit as a tour of the airport, but The Guardian does not detail the possum's movements beyond the gift shop. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Trump threatens to deploy ICE agents to US airports during DHS funding shutdown. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump threatened to deploy ICE agents to US airports starting Monday if Democrats do not fund DHS, per ABC, Guardian, X3, and ABC, X2. More than 400 TSA workers have quit since the partial government shutdown began on February 14, 2026, per ABC, X2, and Guardian, X2. TSA personnel are set to miss a second full paycheck on March 27, 2026, due to the partial government shutdown, per ABC, X2, and Guardian, X3. The partial government shutdown is in its 36th day as of March 2026, per ABC, X2, and Guardian, X3. ICE agents are not specifically trained for airport security, which is TSA's domain, per ABC, X2, and Guardian, X2. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states Trump fired DHS Secretary Kristi Noem amid growing criticism of the administration's immigration tactics, but Guardian does not mention the firing in its articles. ABC reports Stuart Baker, Bush-era DHS official, saying using ICE agents for airport security may be slower than using trained people, but it would be better than having nobody, while Guardian does not quote Baker or reference this perspective. ABC mentions the ACLU's claim that TSA provided lists of travelers to ICE, but Guardian does not reference this specific detail. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian public's rising anxiety over national security threats and perceived government unpreparedness. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Australian National University's National Security College conducted surveys and consultations between November 2024 and February 2026 involving over 20,000 Australians, including 480 interviews, 300 meetings, 8 focus groups, and 100 public submissions. Guardian, Newscamau, ABC. Nearly two-thirds, 66 to 68%, of Australians surveyed in 2025 to 2026 consider national security a concern, with a sharp rise among 18 to 24-year-olds from 22% in November 2024 to 55% in February 2026. Guardian, Newscamau, ABC. 45% of Australians believe a foreign military attack on Australian soil is likely, very likely, or almost certain within 5 years, according to July 2025 data. Guardian, Newscamau, ABC. 72% of Australians rated domestic terrorism a serious concern in February 2026, up from 55% in November 2024, following the Bondi beach attack on December 14, 2025. Guardian, Newscamau, ABC. More than 85% of respondents in 2025 to 2026 believe climate change impacts, AI-enabled attacks, disinformation, foreign interference, economic crises, and supply disruptions are more likely than not to affect Australia by the end of the decade. Guardian, Newscamau, ABC. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian states 45% of Australians considered a foreign military attack likely, very likely, or almost certain in July 2025, while ABC and Newscom Australia do not specify the exact percentage breakdown for this exact phrasing. No contradictions found between sources regarding the timeline of the Bondi attack. All agree it was December 14, 2025. No contradictions found regarding the percentage of Australians concerned about national security. All agree 66-68%. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, and SBS News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US military escalation against Iran and global allies' refusal to support. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Trump requested China deploy ships to the Strait of Hormuz to secure oil flow during Iran conflict. China declined the US request to intervene in the Strait of Hormuz. Germany's defense minister stated this is not our war regarding US-Iran conflict. France's President Emmanuel Macron declared France will never take part in operations to open or liberate the Strait of Hormuz in the current context. Italy, despite being Trump-friendly, also declined US requests for support in the Strait of Hormuz. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two articles. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Testing and reviewing the best chef's knives for home cooks. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Ben Lippert tested 14 knives over a fortnight for The Guardian's knife review. The Wusthof Classic Chef Knife, 20 cm, was named the best overall chef's knife by Ben Lippert. The Victorinox Fibrox Chef's Knife, 20 cm, was identified as the best budget knife at £43. Ben Lippert describes himself as opinionated and prioritizes substance over style in knives. Helen Simmons, knife specialist, advises against using knives on stones, bones, or frozen food. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 does not mention the Sabatier Cook's knife, 25 cm, as a top pick, while Article 2 names it the best workhorse Western-style knife. Article 1 does not list the Blenheim Forge Santoku knife, 17.5 cm, as a top recommendation, while Article 2 calls it the best investment knife. Article 1 does not mention the Opinel N-Degree 118 chef's knife as a top pick, while Article 2 recommends it as the best knife for beginners. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Final radio ratings survey results for Kyle and Jackie O Show and related network performance. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Kyle and Jackie O Show lost 60,000 listeners in Sydney, ending with a cumulative audience of 636,000 during the January 18th to February 28th survey period. The show's Sydney market share remained unchanged at 12.7%, trailing Ben Fordham's 2 GB by 4 percentage points, 16.7%. Jackie O. Henderson left the show on February 20th after being berated by Kyle Sandilands on air, leading to a solo broadcast the following week. Keys owner ARN suspended Kyle Sandilands for 14 days to remedy alleged serious misconduct and contractual breach before terminating his contract. Henderson's representatives informed ARN she could no longer work with Sandilands, leading to her contract termination. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. NFL player Cam Skattebo's controversial denial of CTE and asthma legitimacy sparks backlash. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Cam Skattebo, 24, is a running back for the New York Giants who was drafted in the 2025 NFL Draft, 4th round out of Arizona State. Skattebo made comments on the Bring the Juice podcast dismissing chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, as an excuse and asthma as fake, saying just breathe air. Skattebo scored 7 touchdowns and ran for 410 yards in his rookie season, 2025, before an ankle injury ended his season. CTE is a degenerative brain condition linked to repeated head trauma, with symptoms including memory loss, depression, and suicidal thoughts, and can only be diagnosed posthumously. A 2017 study found CTE in 110 of 111 former football players examined, and the NFL acknowledged a link between football and CTE in 2016. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Skattebo's apology was posted on X, Twitter, on Saturday, while no specific date is mentioned in Article 2. Article 1 references a 2017 study finding CTE in 110 of 111 former players, whereas Article 2 cites a 2023 Boston University study with 92% prevalence. Article 1 does not mention Junior So or Aaron Hernandez as examples of CTE cases, while Article 2 explicitly lists them. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Death of married at first sight expert Mel Schilling from bowel cancer at 54. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Mel Schilling died on Tuesday, March 2026, at age 54 from bowel cancer that metastasized to her brain. Schilling was diagnosed with colon cancer in December 2023 and underwent surgery to remove a 5 cm tumor. In February 2024, a routine scan revealed small nodules in her lungs indicating metastasis. Schilling underwent 16 rounds of chemotherapy over 2 years before radiotherapy sessions. She was diagnosed with terminal cancer in December 2025 after experiencing blinding headaches and numbness. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC mentions Schilling was first diagnosed with colon cancer in December 2023, but SMH The Age Guardian only state in 2023 without a specific month. ABC states Schilling was diagnosed with a 5 cm tumor in December 2023, while SMH The Age describe it as the size of a lemon, no measurement. ABC reports Schilling was eligible for a groundbreaking clinical trial starting March 2026, but this detail is not mentioned in SMH The Age Guardian. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US federal judge blocks Pentagon's press access policy under Trump administration. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A federal judge, Paul Friedman, blocked key portions of the Pentagon's press access policy introduced in October 2025, ruling it unconstitutional under the First Amendment. The policy prohibited journalists from soliciting unauthorized information from military personnel and revoked credentials of outlets refusing to sign the new policy. Of 56 news outlets in the Pentagon Press Association, only one agreed to sign the new policy, leading to the loss of passes for the remaining outlets. The Pentagon assembled a new press corps consisting of pro-Trump outlets and media personalities after major outlets left. The New York Times filed a lawsuit against the Pentagon, alleging the policy violated free speech protections and gave the Pentagon unfettered discretion to revoke passes. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian mentions the policy was introduced in October 2025, while ABC does not specify the exact month but refers to it as a 2025 change. The Guardian states the policy prohibited journalists from soliciting information that the Defense Department didn't directly provide, while ABC does not explicitly mention this specific prohibition. The Guardian notes the Pentagon's policy was approved by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, but ABC does not mention Hegseth's name in this context. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian public and government response to US-Israel military strikes on Iran and regional escalation. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Resolve Political Monitor Survey, SMH, found 61% of Australians want the country to stay out of the US-Israel war on Iran, with only 13% supporting involvement. The Resolve Survey, SMH, reported 39% oppose and 28% support US-Israeli military actions in Iran, while 47% support regime change in Tehran and 9% want the current Iranian government to remain. An Iranian projectile struck near Australia's Al Minhad airbase in the UAE, causing a fire and damaging an accommodation block and medical facility, with no Australian injuries, SMH. The average price of petrol in Australia surged over $2 a litre since the war began, and oil tanker passage through the Strait of Hormuz virtually halted, SMH. 85% of Australians are concerned about the war's impact on cost of living, SMH. But not all outlets told the same story. SMH report 28% support US-Israeli military actions in Iran, while The Guardian reports only 26% support the US-Israel bombardment of Iran. SMH state 29% of Australians endorse Australia's support for US-Israeli strikes, but The Guardian reports only 34% approve of Australia's response to the military action. SMH cite 39% backing the decision to send missiles to the UAE, while The Guardian reports only 32% backed the government's move to send missiles to the UAE. This story was covered by The Guardian, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Victorian public school teachers and principals strike over pay dispute, 2024. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Approximately 30,000 Victorian public school teachers, principals, and education support staff are striking on March 24, 2024, marking the first statewide strike in 13 years, ABC, Guardian, The Age, news.com.au, Guardian. The Australian Education Union, AEU, is demanding a 35% pay rise over 4 years for its members, citing lower wages compared to interstate counterparts, ABC, Guardian, The Age, news.com.au. The Victorian government offered a 17% pay rise, ABC, The Age, and later a revised 18.5% deal, Guardian, The Age, which the AEU rejected as totally unacceptable. The Age, Guardian. The Fair Work Commission approved the strike after 98% of AEU members voted in favour. Guardian, news.com.au. About 500 state schools are expected to close or face significant disruptions due to the strike. ABC, Guardian, news.com.au. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC and The Age report the government's initial offer was 17%, while Guardian and The Age later report the government's revised offer was 18.5%, no direct contradiction in initial offer but mixed reporting. The Guardian and The Age mention some principals advised parents to keep children home, but ABC and news.com.au do not explicitly state this as a widespread directive from principals. The Age states the government's offer was made 9 months after negotiations began, while ABC states the offer was made after more than a year of negotiations. Timeline discrepancy. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Nigel Farage's Cameo platform controversies and political alignment with extremist content. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Nigel Farage earned at least £374,893 from Cameo videos over 5 years, charging £79 per video at his most recent rate. Farage recorded Cameo videos for a Canadian white supremacist group and a man jailed for rioting, 16-month sentence. Farage's Cameo videos included references to anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, misogynistic remarks about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and extremist slogans like Up the Rhodesia. Farage withdrew from Cameo on Thursday, the 30th of April, citing security concerns after exposure by The Guardian. Reform UK's spokesperson stated Farage's Cameo videos should not be treated as political statements or campaign activity. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Farage earned over £1 million in a year from various activities, while Article 2 only confirms £374,893 from Cameo alone. Article 1 claims Farage recorded cameos for a man jailed for rioting *and someone discussing AOC's breasts, but Article 2 only mentions the rioter without the AOC detail. Article 1 describes Farage's Cameo videos as performances and prostituting himself, while Article 3 frames them as personalized messages not intended as political statements. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Coronial inquest into Bradley Murdoch's death and his refusal to disclose Peter Falconio's remains. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Bradley Murdoch was sentenced to life imprisonment in 2005 for the murder of Peter Falconio and attempted kidnapping of Joanne Lees, with a non-parole period of 28 years. Murdoch died from stage 4 cancer, throat cancer, in Alice Springs Hospital's palliative care unit on July 16, 2025, after 22 years in prison. Police made 2 attempts to convince Murdoch to reveal Falconio's remains in the weeks before his death, one at Alice Springs Correctional Centre on June 25, 2025, and another in palliative care days before his death. Murdoch refused to watch a video of Falconio's parents shown by police during the June 25 visit and yelled at police to get out during the final 30-second encounter in palliative care. A $500,000 reward remains for information leading to Falconio's remains, which have never been found despite Murdoch's conviction for his murder. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC describes Murdoch's final police visit as lasting 30 seconds with no interaction, while The Guardian specifies he yelled at police to get out during this encounter. ABC states Murdoch's son raised concerns about perceived delays in diagnosis and treatment and missed medications, but The Guardian does not explicitly mention these specific complaints. ABC emphasizes Murdoch's excellent medical care with no missed opportunities for earlier diagnosis, while The Guardian implies some dissatisfaction with treatment, e.g., verbal abuse by Murdoch, without contradicting the quality of care. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's waste sector faces diesel shortages threatening service disruptions and public health risks. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Waste collectors are receiving reduced diesel allocations, with one NSW operator told to expect 12,000 L instead of their usual 50,000 L fortnightly delivery, ABC, Newscomau. West Australian waste operators expect only about half their regular diesel allocations at next refill, ABC, Newscomau. Waste industry leaders are meeting with Assistant Environment Minister Josh Wilson in Canberra to discuss supply and price issues, ABC, Newscomau. The federal government temporarily lowered diesel standards to allow imports from the US, Canada, and Europe, ABC, Newscomau. Waste collectors have been excluded from the Priority Fuel User List under the Liquid Fuel Emergency Act, ABC, Newscomau. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Queensland Government appoints former police officer Darren Robinson to Legal Aid Board amid Palm Island controversy. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Darren Robinson was a former Queensland Police Service officer, senior sergeant, who investigated a complaint against Christopher Hurley in 2004, ruling it fictitious. A 2005 coronial inquest described Robinson's investigation as superficial, biased and misleading, and found his conclusion was dishonest and flew in the face of objective evidence. The Crime and Misconduct Commission recommended Robinson be disciplined alongside 3 other officers in 2015, but no disciplinary action was taken. Robinson was part of a police team sent to Palm Island in 2004 to investigate the death in custody of Mulrunji Dumaji and later accompanied tactical police on raids after the island's police station was burned down. Robinson was admitted to practice as a solicitor in 2014 and is now a Townsville-based lawyer appointed to the Legal Aid Queensland Board by Attorney General Deb Frecklington in February 2024. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Robinson was appointed as part of a team of police sent to Palm Island to investigate Dumaji's death in 2004, while Article 2 clarifies he was a friend of Christopher Hurley and investigated a prior complaint against him before the death. Article 1 does not mention Robinson being awarded the Queensland Police Valour Award, while Article 2 explicitly states he received this award. Article 1 does not reference Justice Mortimer's 2015 ruling on Robinson's conduct, while Article 2 details his findings on harassment and biased policing. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Leadership crisis and potential spill in Victorian Labor Party ahead of 2024 election. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Jacinta Allan is Victorian Premier and faces leadership spill speculation due to low approval ratings and upcoming November 2024 election. Allan's net approval rating is -37%, Demos AU poll in Herald Sun, and only 20% of voters prefer her as Premier, Resolve polling for The Age, February 2024. Deputy Premier Ben Carroll, Right Faction, and Transport Infrastructure Minister Gabrielle Williams, Left Faction, are the most likely leadership contenders. Allan dismissed leadership speculation as anonymous gossip from scallywags and stated, "She has great support from my strong and united Labour team." Victorian Labor Party has 69 seats in caucus, with Left Faction holding 39 seats and Right Faction holding the remaining 30. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports Socialist Left Faction's South East Group is directly pushing for a leadership change, but these MPs emphatically denied it to The Guardian. The Age states a factional chief offered the view that anyone other than Allan would lead the party to a better result, while The Guardian notes senior Right Faction figures are reluctant to move without Left Faction coordination. The Guardian claims Allan's hesitation to act on corruption is a major issue, but this detail is not mentioned in other sources. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US Senate confirms Markwayne Mullin as DHS Secretary amid immigration enforcement disputes. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Markwayne Mullin was nominated by Donald Trump to lead the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, after Kristi Noem was ousted as Secretary. The US Senate confirmed Mullin on a near-party line vote of 54 to 45, with only Rand Paul, Republican Kentucky, voting against him among Republicans and John Fetterman, Democrat Pennsylvania, and Martin Heinrich, Democrat New Mexico, voting in favor among Democrats. Mullin's confirmation hearing occurred amid a partial DHS shutdown caused by Democrats demanding guardrails on immigration enforcement, including bans on masked officers, random stops, and stricter use of force policies. The shutdown has furloughed or unpaid employees at Coast Guard, TSA, and FEMA, while ICE and border enforcement operations remain funded under the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, 2023. Mullin stated he would not allow immigration agents to enter homes or businesses without a judicial warrant, contradicting reports that ICE agents had been authorized to use administrative warrants. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Mullin's confirmation vote was 54 to 45, while Article 2 does not specify the full Senate vote count but focuses on committee votes. Article 1 reports Mullin's goal is to reduce DHS's public profile, but Article 3 emphasizes his lack of transparency and willingness to condone political violence, creating a conflicting impression of his leadership style. Article 2 claims Democrats are quiet about Mullin, while Article 3 highlights Gary Peters' public criticism of Mullin's condoning political violence during the hearing. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US-Iran escalation over Strait of Hormuz and energy infrastructure threats in Middle East war. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump gave Iran a 48-hour deadline, until 23:44 Greenwich Mean Time on March 25, to fully reopen the Strait of Hormuz without threat, or face US strikes on Iran's power plants, posting on Truth Social on March 24, 2026. Iran's Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf stated that if Iran's power plants and infrastructure are targeted, vital infrastructure as well as energy and oil infrastructure across the entire region will be considered legitimate targets and will be irreversibly destroyed, according to statements on March 24 to 25, 2026. Iran's Military Operational Command Qatem al-Anbiya warned that if the US targets Iran's power plants, the Strait of Hormuz will be completely closed and will not reopen until Iran's destroyed power plants are rebuilt, as reported on March 24 to 25, 2026. Iran's missiles struck southern Israeli cities Dimona and Orod on March 24 to 25, injuring approximately 200 people, including children, and damaging buildings, with Israeli air defenses failing to intercept some strikes, confirmed by multiple sources. The Strait of Hormuz remains effectively closed to vessels linked to Iran's enemies, US and Israel, as per Ali Mousavi, Iran's representative to the International Maritime Organization, on March 24 to 25, 2026. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian, Steve Reed, denied Iran was targeting Europe, stating he was not aware of any assessment that Iran intended to strike European capitals, while the Israeli military chief Eyal Zami claimed Iran's missiles had a range reaching Berlin, Paris, or Berlin, implying a direct threat to Europe. ABC reported that Lebanese President Joseph Aoun accused Israel of laying the groundwork for an invasion in Lebanon's south, while Israel's military stated it was targeting Hezbollah infrastructure to contain the threat in the south and eliminate it, framing the strikes as defensive rather than preparatory for an invasion. The Guardian, Steve Reed, stated Trump was speaking for himself when threatening to obliterate Iran's power plants, while other sources, e.g., Newskamau, SMH, presented the threat as an official US administration stance without qualifying it as Trump's personal opinion. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, and Sydney Morning Herald. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Iranian women's football team returns home after asylum drama in Australia amid war fears. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 7 Iranian women's footballers and 1 staff member initially sought asylum in Australia after the AFC Women's Asian Cup, March 2024. 5 players, including captain Zura Ganbari, and 1 staff member, Zura Meshkinka, later withdrew asylum claims and returned to Iran via Malaysia, Oman, and Turkey. 2 players, Fatma Pasandadeh, 21, and Atfef Ramazanasadeh, 33, remained in Australia and trained with Brisbane Roar without hijabs. The players' silence during Iran's national anthem before a match against South Korea, Asian Cup, sparked global attention and regime backlash. Iranian state media paraded the returning players in floral wreaths over the Israeli flag, with officials calling their return a propaganda victory over Western influence. But not all outlets told the same story. Newskamau claims Iranian state media filmed the players holding hands with little girls wearing white hijabs over the Israeli flag, but ABC and Guardian do not mention this detail. Newskamau reports Iranian judoka Said Mali explicitly stated the players are 100% not safe and may be killed or imprisoned, while ABC omits this direct threat and only cites Vice President Erf's denial of safety concerns. Guardian states the players were whisked to a safe house after secretly leaving their hotel on March 10, but ABC does not specify the timing or secrecy of their departure. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia faces fuel shortages amid diesel standard relaxation and supply disruptions. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Energy Minister Chris Bowen announced 164 NSW service stations were out of diesel, ABC, Guardian 3. In Queensland, 55 stations lacked diesel and 35 lacked regular unleaded petrol, ABC, Guardian 3. Victoria had 162 stations with at least one fuel type unavailable, ABC, Guardian 3. 6 fuel shipments to Australia were cancelled in April, with some replaced by alternate sources, Guardian 1, ABC. Australia temporarily lowered diesel standards, flashpoint from 61.5 degrees Celsius to 60.5 degrees Celsius, for 6 months to increase supply, ABC, Guardian 3. But not all outlets told the same story. Guardian 1 states Bowen declined to share statistics for WA, NT, SA, and Tasmania, but ABC provides specific shortages for these states: WA, 6, SA, 46, Tasmania, 1 diesel, 6 unleaded. Guardian 1 reports 32 NSW stations lacked petrol, while ABC reports 164 lacked diesel and 289 lacked at least one fuel type, no direct petrol shortage number for ABC. Guardian 1 states Bowen said rationing was not an immediate prospect, while ABC notes informal rationing, e.g., fuel limits, is already emerging in regional areas. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Israel's strike on Iran's South Pars gas field and Iran's retaliatory attacks on Gulf energy infrastructure. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Israel bombed Iranian facilities linked to the South Pars gas field, the largest natural gas field in the world, shared with Qatar, ABC, Guardian, ABC, Guardian, Guardian, ABC, Guardian, Guardian. South Pars is part of a 9,700 square kilometer gas field, with Iran's portion estimated to hold between 14 and 51 trillion cubic meters of natural gas, ABC. Iran retaliated by launching strikes on Qatar's Ras Laffan gas complex, causing extensive damage and knocking out about 17%, or 12.8 million tons per year, of Qatar's LNG export capacity. Guardian, ABC, Guardian, Guardian, ABC, Guardian. Qatar Energy reported $20 billion in damage to Ras Laffan and estimated repairs would take 3 to 5 years. Guardian, ABC, Guardian, Guardian. Iran's Revolutionary Guards warned that Saudi Arabia's Samref refinery, Yanbu, UAE's Al Hosn gas field, and Qatar's Mosque Eid petrochemical complex were direct and legitimate targets. Guardian. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC and Guardian both report Trump claimed he knew nothing about the South Pars strike in advance, but Israeli officials from both sources dispute this claim, stating the US was informed. The Guardian reports Trump's Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth warned Iran in bellicose language, while Trump's Treasury Secretary suggested lifting sanctions on Iranian cargoes at sea, creating conflicting messaging from the US administration. ABC states Qatar's Ras Laffan damage could take years and cost $28 billion, while The Guardian reports $20 billion in damage and 3 to 5 years for repairs. Both sources agree on the timeline but differ slightly on the cost. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Former Liberal staffer Bruce Lehrmann faces Queensland rape trial in November 2024. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Bruce Lehrmann, 30, is charged with 2 counts of rape in Toowoomba, Queensland, allegedly occurring in October 2021. The trial is scheduled to begin on November 2, 2024, in Toowoomba District Court before Judge Deborah Richards. Lehrmann met the complainant at the Vault strip club in Toowoomba and later allegedly sexually assaulted her twice without consent. Lehrmann was previously a Canberra-based Liberal Party staffer and was charged in January 2023, committed for trial in July 2024. Defense solicitor Zali Burrows has indicated Lehrmann may contest the charges and is still deciding whether to request a judge-alone trial or a jury trial. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Prime Minister Albanese and Minister Burke heckled at Lakemba Mosque Eid event. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Anthony Albanese and Tony Burke attended Eid prayers at Lakemba Mosque in Sydney's West on Friday morning, 2024. Protesters at the mosque shouted phrases including genocide supporters, disgrace, and shame at Albanese and Burke. A 33-year-old man was removed from the mosque by police after being identified as a heckler and given a move-on direction. Gamal Kir, secretary of the Lebanese Muslim Association, delivered a statement defending the invitation of Albanese and Burke. Lebanese Health Ministry reports at least 912 deaths, including 111 children, and 2,221 wounded in Israel's strikes on Lebanon. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports Albanese made a hasty exit avoiding a crowd on the mosque steps, while the ABC states he and Burke remained until the end of the speech before being led out. The SMH claims initial plans included Albanese giving a speech, but The Guardian and ABC do not mention this. The ABC reports a heckler claimed Albanese was responsible for 1 billion deaths, while this exact figure is not mentioned in other sources. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, and Sydney Morning Herald. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Childcare worker convicted of indecent treatment of child, acquitted of rape charges in Queensland. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Avinder J. Singh, a 43-year-old Fiji citizen, was found guilty of indecent treatment of a child under his care in Queensland in 2022. Singh was not guilty of the charge of digitally raping the child, as determined by a jury after a 3-day trial. The victim was a child in Singh's care at a Sunshine Coast childcare centre in 2022. Singh was sentenced to 20 months imprisonment, with 10 months suspended and deportation to Fiji following service. Singh's visa was cancelled after being charged with rape in 2022, making him an unlawful citizen. He was deported to Fiji in July 2025 before voluntarily returning in February 2026 to face trial. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1, ABC, states Singh was deported in July 2025 and incurred debt for deportation costs, while Article 2, ABC, does not mention this detail. Article 1, ABC, includes the judge's explicit description of the offence as brazen and a betrayal of trust, but Article 2, ABC, does not repeat this phrasing. Article 2, ABC, mentions the jury requested to watch the child's video evidence a second time, which is not referenced in Article 1, ABC. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis.